really look forward to jumping into this with you. Make sure that you dive all the way into it. You're going to get a lot out of it. Soak it up. I look forward to this experience with you. Yeah, my wife and I had the same reaction when it was our first trip. We just got back, and it's like, when are we going back? And we're planning on a month with our kids, because I agree there's something very, very special there. Which really, one of the things that I took away from it is that having a faith that reaches back into the distant past, into history for thousands of years, it's a critical dimension, because a lot of people talk about, well, I'm spiritual, and I have a spirituality. But where are the roots? And that was the feeling I got while I was there, is that these deep roots that reach way back into the past, and then to see current day archaeological corroboration to something that was written a long time ago and disregarded by factions of people saying, this is all story, none of it can be proven, is an experience, when you have it firsthand, is something that I think strengthens faith. Strengthens the position you've taken in your life about what the meaning is in it, and it's good to know that you can keep going back and keep having this experience. So as you described, starting at a young age, I think you said 10 years old when you started to walk in faith, and now all these years later and keep going back. What has it meant to get deeper into those roots by going back to Israel and actually walking in those places?
For me, every time there's the connection of sensing that I'm where God did miracles. I'm in a place that for whatever reason He chose to be. He chose this land to reveal Himself, not only in the Scripture and in the Word, but also in the flesh of Christ. And it also is not lost on me that everywhere I step, I'm seeing prophecies fulfilled. The desert is blooming again. From my perspective, having now gone for over 44 years to Israel, I can remember places that I went that were absolutely barren. There was nothing but rock and dust. And I go to those same places today, and they are lush with vegetation, growing crops that are now being exported all over the world out of what was nothing. So I see that truly the desert blooms. Sometimes we remember that passage in Ezekiel that the dry bones live again. I've seen the dry bones live again. I've watched this land that was just barely getting by, now galloping with extraordinary technology, economic advancement. And this has been in my short lifetime that I've seen this. It's pretty remarkable. I'll never forget what one of my seminary professors told me. It was an archaeology class, and he said that there has never been one archaeological discovery that has controverted one single verse of Scripture. And I thought that was a pretty audacious statement. But now, 40 years later, he was right. There's never been a single archaeological discovery that did, in fact, controvert a Scripture.
And since he made that statement, there have been several more discoveries.
Many more, yeah.
And it still hasn't happened. And that's the thing. I mean, when we were there, we were in a dig that was, I think, within months old, that was still like, there's still more and more emerging. And the corroboration is startling, and again, if you're intellectually honest, it's hard to, not take notice and say, there's something here that matters and that's supportive in nature. So with a Christian family, that you're raising kids in this, in this value system and in this spirituality, and you have these roots that go back. You spent time, as a pastor also, right? So as you were in that position, working with these families, what was the experience from that side of it? Because we all experience it maybe from the side of sitting and watching people like you. What's it like from the side saying that your activities are in pastoring to a congregation?
For me, pastoring was an incredible school. It wasn't so much what I gave them; it's what they gave me. I sometimes feel like they really got the worst end of the deal. The two churches that I pastored over a period of a little over 11 years were great years, but I see it as an amazing education for me. And here's what I mean by that. I learned something about people and about the challenges people face. And I've often said, because there's a view that if you've been a pastor, then you're really kind of living in this very compartmentalized world. You don't understand much beyond the church and this very narrowly focused world of theology. Mm-hmm. And I find that ridiculous, because as I've said to many people, nothing better prepared me to be in public office than having been a pastor.
Right.
And here's why. Every social pathology that exists in our culture today, I saw firsthand and can put a name and a face on it because I was a pastor. And I don't know of any other profession that a person can have in which you are so confronted with every human frailty as you are if you're a pastor. You see people who lose a child. You're with them when they bury their parents. You're there when the children become the parents of their parents because their parents lose mental capacity and have to have someone care for them. You're there when a child is addicted to drugs. You watch when people make the tough decision to take off artificial life support. You also see the best moments of life. You see the birth of a child, the marriage of a daughter, everything from the cradle to the grave, the best, the worst, you're there for it. And there's nothing out there, doesn't matter. A person who says, I'm really concerned that I'm in the wrong gender, you've dealt with people like that. These are real issues for you. A teenage girl who's 14, she gets pregnant, she tells her pastor sometimes before she tells anybody. So these are not abstract issues that you've read about in a book. These are people that you've cried with and you've talked to and you've counseled. And so there's nothing out there that you haven't put your arms around. And I think that that is a powerful learning experience for every person who has done it. And I know that there was never a public policy issue that did not get affected by my having been a pastor. And when people talked about poverty and how do we deal with poverty, I had a perspective of it because I'd been in people's homes when there was no food in the cupboard. You know, I was the one who went over there and took them a sack of food. So I get it in a way that a lot of people have only heard about it.
You know, it's really interesting because this is not, in your experience, an abstract intellectual or academic issue.
Yeah.
You lived in it with people, and it's not a single issue. There's the broad spectrum. So almost this sounds like it should be a prerequisite for someone who wants to hold public office, that you don't just abstractly understand this, but you actually experience it firsthand in a many times a confidential way, I'd imagine, as people are confiding in you.
One of the aspects of being a pastor is that you do have to keep a confidence. You have to be able to be trustworthy. I can't think of anything more valuable to go into public office with than an understanding that there's certain things people are going to tell you that you have to keep to yourself. And you have to be able to keep your commitments. The greatest frustration of politics is people will look you in the eye and tell you they'll do something and then turn around and not do it. It's pretty painful.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every person who runs for public office should be a pastor, but every person who runs for public office ought to have lived some life. I worry about people who come right out of college, they get into a political life, they maybe are a staffer, then they run for office, and the only thing they've ever done is to work off a government paycheck, and they've maybe helped develop policy or carry it out, but they've never gone out there and touched the people that are going to be directly affected by whatever legislation they're pushing. And I wish every person had at least some real life experience before they tried to hoist that upon others.
Yeah. That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.